Now let's talk about independent directors. And before we have a break, let's just finish independent directors. So the RCC now mandates the inclusion of independent directors in the composition of the board of corporations vested with public interest. These directors are required to ensure impartiality and protect the interests of minority shareholders and other stakeholders. And these independent directors must meet specific qualifications and are subject to rules that promote their independence. So what is the legal basis of this requirement of independent directors? Section 22 of the code, which defines independent directors as individuals who are independent of management and free from any relationship, independent of management and free from any relationship that could materially interfere with their judgment. They are tasked with ensuring transparency and accountability in corporate governance. So saan kailangan ang mga independent directors? Okay? Saan dapat may requirement na yung composition ng board merong independent directors? Okay? Kailangan to sa corporations with securities registered with the SEC. Kailangan rin yan sa corporations listed on an exchange. Corporations with assets of at least 500 million plus, okay, 200 or more shareholders holding at least 100 shares each. Kailangan rin ng independent directors sa banks, quasi-banks, insurance companies, and other financial intermediaries. And other companies or corporations engaged in businesses vested with public interest. How about common carriers? Are they required in their board to have independent directors? The answer is yes. Okay? Because they are also corporations vested with public interest. In fact, we have special provisions highlighting this nature of common carriers. And aside from what is required by the revised corporation code of corporations vested with public interest, the law also adds another burden to common carriers, which is extraordinary diligence. Take note of that point. While we say that a common carrier is a corporation vested with public interest, not all corporations vested with public interest must exercise extraordinary diligence. Hindi naman nakalagay sa RCC yung extraordinary diligence. Okay? Only common carriers are mandated to observe that. Now, as to the election and term of independent directors, they are elected by shareholders during the election of directors. Their qualifications, disqualifications, and term limits are governed by the SEC rules to align with international best practices. Tom versus Rodriguez, 2016. Corporate powers are exercised through the board, okay? And the board may include independent directors, okay, which are required in corporations vested with public interest. So this ensures that decisions are made in the best interest of the corporation and its stakeholders. Okay, examples dealing with the independent directors. Example 1, we have a publicly listed corporation. So pag publicly listed yan, it's a corporation vested with public interest or a corporation that must comply with the 20% requirement of the presence of independent directors in the board. Okay? Publicly listed corporation with 300 shareholders must elect at least 20% of its board as independent directors. These directors are tasked with ensuring that decisions such as mergers or acquisitions are made in the best interest of all shareholders, particularly the minority. So yung independent directors in publicly listed corporations, dapat 20% yung composition nila sa board. This is mandatory under the RCC. Purpose ng independent directors, to protect minority interests. Another example, banks. Banks are also considered corporations vested with public interest. A bank as a financial intermediary is required to have independent directors consisting 20% of its board to oversee compliance with regulatory requirements and to safeguard depositor interests. Goal of these provisions, enhancement of corporate governance, protection of stakeholder interests, and also avoidance of legal risk. Now, the concept of independent directors, as you may have observed in the discussion, is always associated with the concept of corporations vested with public interest. Basta pag meron yan, we need to associate it with independent directors. But what are corporations vested with public interest? These are corporations subject to stricter governance and regulatory requirements because of their significant impact on the public economy or specific industries. And as you observe in the RCC, there are additional obligations imposed on corporations vested with public interests to ensure transparency, accountability, protection of stakeholders, particularly the minority, as well as the public. Legal basis, Section 22 of the revised Corporation Code. So what are examples of these corporations? Corporations whose securities are registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Corporations listed on a stock exchange. Corporations with assets of at least 50 million pesos. And out of these assets, at least, and this corporation with this 50 million peso asset, meron siyang 200 shareholders. Each shareholder has 100 shares. Ito, pag ganito yung setup ng corporation, it's a corporation vested with public interest, as this may have an impact on the public. Of course, banks, financial institutions, they are corporations vested with public interest. And other corporations as may be, deemed by the SEC. So ano yung requirement pag ang corporation ay corporation vested with public interest? Under Section 22, okay, as an additional requirement to them, their board must be composed of 20% independent directors. At least 20% of the board of directors of a corporation vested with public interest must be independent directors. Now, what again are independent directors? They are the directors or individuals who are free from any relationship that could impair their independent judgment in carrying out their responsibilities. So they cannot be swayed, okay, by anyone, by money, diba? To protect the interests even of minority shareholders. Ngayon, maliban dito sa mandate sa Section 22 na dapat may independent directors sa composition ng kanilang board, there are still additional obligation to corporations with public interest. Among these, yung pagkakaroon ng compliance officer. So nung lumabas yung RCC, ang dami nang naghahanap ng compliance officer because it's mandated by law. So yung mga banks, yung mga registered sa exchange, meron silang compliance officer who must be elected by the board to ensure adherence to laws, rules, kailangan niya. Okay? So that the SEC will be informed of how a corporation complied with provisions on corporate governance. Then, you have these reportorial additional requirements for these kinds of corporations. Okay? They must submit a director or trustee compensation report. Okay? They must submit a performance appraisal report. So kung titignan natin, talagang under stricter regulation ang corporations vested with public interest. And for material contracts, corporations vested with public interest, okay, pag involved yung directors, trustees, or officers nila sa material contracts, then this corporation or the board of the corporation must approve the same by at least two-thirds of the board. Okay? With a majority of independent directors voting in favor. This could be the possible question. Tanong, involving corporations vested with public interest. What are the additional governance requirements for corporations vested with public interest under the RCC? Okay, answer, under sections 22, 24, and 117, corporations vested with public interest have the following additional obligations, including the election of independent directors, appointment of a compliance officer, and submission of additional reports to SEC. Now, are all large corporations considered corporations vested with public interest? The answer is no. We enumerated already what possible corporations fall within this category. Not all big corporations are corporations vested with public interest. Yung pagkakaroon ng independent directors sa composition ng board, that's not a optional requirement. It's a mandatory requirement of RCC. Yung pagkakaroon ng compliance officer in corporations vested with public interest is also a mandatory requirement. Hindi pwedeng i-overlook yan ng corporation. Now, question. Here is a hypothetical scenario. ABC Corporation is a publicly listed company with assets worth 100 million pesos and 300 shareholders, each holding at least 200 shares. So kung maalala nyo, pasok to dun sa one kind of corporation vested with public interest. Kasi dun sa nabanggit natin kanina, para maging corporation vested with public interest, yung niya must be at least 50 million pesos. Yung number of shareholders, 200. At bawat shareholder dapat may 100 shares. In this problem, na doble. Okay, so the board of directors consists of 10 members. But none of them are independent directors. Wala sa kanila, independent directors. Sabi kanina, 20% at 20% must compose a corporation vested with public interest. Furthermore, this ABC Corporation has also failed to submit its director compensation report for the past 3 years. Question. Does ABC Corporation qualify as a corporation vested with public interest? Answer, yes. What are the legal consequences of failing to comply with the governance requirements under the RCC? So kung walang independent director dun sa composition ng board, hindi nagsasubmit ng reportorial, what would be the effect on the answer? Under section 117, the failure to include independent directors and submit the required reports may subject the corporation vested with public interest to penalties and regulatory sanctions by the SEC, including possible placement under delinquent status for repeated non-compliance. So pag nilagay sa delinquent status na ang corporation, it must comply within a period of 2 years, otherwise its franchise could be revoked. Okay, let's have a 5-minute break muna before we continue. Term holdover and removal. Yeah. So when we speak of the term of a director, it refers to the fixed period. Okay? Meaning, hindi mo pwedeng pahabain yan. Okay? During which a director is entitled to hold office as a matter of right. This is distinct from the concept of tenure. Magkaiba ang term at tenure, as tenure refers to the actual period, not the fixed period, but the actual period a director serves. And this includes the possible holdover period. The rules are provided in the code, section 22, which states that the term of a director in stock corporations is set at 1 year. Okay, 1 year. Pagdating sa trustees in a non-stock corporation, their term will not exceed 3 years. So directors and trustees hold office until their successors are elected and qualified. So if the question is, what is the term of directors? You need to qualify whether it's a stock corporation or non-stock. So term of directors or trustees in stock corporation, 1 year, or trustees in non-stock corporation does not exceed 3 years. Now, what do we mean by this holdover period? Okay, directors and trustees remain in office in a holdover capacity, okay, until their successors are elected and qualified. And as we said earlier, the holdover period is not considered as part of the director's term because that's fixed by law, the 1 year period, or in the case of trustees, but it will be part of the tenure of the director or trustee. Jurisprudence in Villa Verde Country Club Incorporated versus Africa, 2009, Supreme Court distinguished term and tenure. Term is the fixed period prescribed by law, while tenure refers to the actual time a director serves, which includes the holdover period. So a holdover period is not part of the director's term, but it is part of their tenure. The holdover period ensures continuity in corporate governance until are duly elected and qualified. So for example, if a director is elected on 2024, their term ends on December 31, 2024. So 1 year. If no successor is elected by January 1, 2025, then the director continues to serve in a holdover capacity until a successor is elected and qualified. So yung January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2024, that is the term of the director. Now for that period after December 31, 2024, where the director serves under a holdover capacity, these would be included already in the tenure of the director. Lim versus Moldex, directors must be elected annually by stockholders because their term fixed by law is limited only to 1 year. So bar exam, possible question, discuss the term of directors under the revised corporation code. How does the holdover period affect their tenure? Answer, in relation to these cases discussed, you have to distinguish between term and tenure, where term is fixed by law, whereas tenure also includes the holdover period. Now let's elaborate on holdover. What is this so-called holdover doctrine? This refers to the principle that corporate directors or officers may continue to hold office beyond their fixed term until their successors are duly elected and qualified. This is for continuity in corporate governance. What is the legal basis of the holdover doctrine? Section 22 of the RCC. As it says, may 1 year term yung directors, but they will serve until their successors are elected and qualified. In Multinational Village Homeowners Association Incorporated versus Gakutan, holdover period was explained as, well, something that is not part of the director's original term of office, but rather it's part of the tenure of the director, and the purpose of the holdover period is to avoid leadership vacuum. A corporation's annual stockholders meeting is scheduled for January 15, 2025. But due to unforeseen circumstances, the meeting is postponed. The directors whose terms expired on January 15, 2025, tapos na yung term nila as prescribed by law, will continue to serve in a holdover capacity until new directors are elected. Okay? About for non-stock corporation, paano mangyayari yung holdover? Or kailan magkakaroon ng holdover director? Okay? A trustee, for example, of a non-stock corporation completes their term, the members fail to elect a replacement, the trustee will remain in office until a successor is elected. Let's try to answer this hypothetical question. A corporation's board of directors failed to hold an election for new directors due to lack of quorum at the annual stockholders meeting. The current director's term have already expired. Question, can the current directors continue to act on behalf of the corporation even if their term already expired? Why or why not? Suggested answer, yes. The current directors can continue to act on behalf of the corporation, but this time in a holdover capacity. Because under Section 22 of the Revised Corporation Code, directors may remain in office until their successors are elected and qualified. This is for continuity in corporate governance and prevention of leadership vacuum. Now let's talk about removal of directors or trustees. How can directors and trustees be removed? Okay, for directors, they could be removed by stockholders or by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, so kung ang tanong, sinong pwedeng magtanggal ng mga directors by or following the provisions of RCC, generally it's the stockholders who have the power to remove directors. Now, Section 27 of the RCC, it provides the rule on how directors and trustees are removed. A grounds for removal, directors or trustees may be removed with or without cause. With or without cause. None of that, pwedeng matanggal with or without cause provided that the procedure is followed. What is the voting requirement to remove directors or trustees? A removal requires the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock for stock corporations or 2/3 of the members entitled to vote for non-stock corporations. So 2/3 vote. Now, meeting requirement. Dapat pag magtanggal ng director or trustee, that must happen during a regular meeting or in a special meeting called specifically for the purpose. There's also a notice requirement to remove a director or trustee. Stockholders or members must be given prior notice of the intention to propose the removal at the meeting. Now, we said earlier na there are two ways or two meetings where a director or a trustee may be removed. It could be during a regular meeting or a special meeting. What are the procedural safeguards if the removal is through a special meeting? If a special meeting is called for removal, this special meeting must be initiated by either the secretary of the corporation upon the order of the president, or it could be by a written demand of the stockholders or members holding at least a majority of the outstanding stock or voting members. There must be a notice specifying the time, place, and intention to propose the removal in that special meeting. There must be protection of minority rights. So, if the removal pertains to a director representing the minority, the removal must be with a cause. Yan lang ang nakakaiba dito. Diba? A director or trustee may be removed with or without cause. But a director representing the minority can only be removed with a cause. Okay, let's see some cases dealing with removal of directors. Bernas versus Cinco, 2015. In here, there was a dispute due to the removal of directors of the Makati Sports Club. The removal was declared invalid because the meeting was improperly called by an oversight committee instead of the president or board of directors as required by the corporation code. Meron rin may ganitong provision rin under the old code. So pag may special meeting, kung dyan tatanggalin ang director, there must be a call from the secretary upon the order of the president. Yan ang pwedeng magtawag, mag-initiate ng special meeting for the removal. The alternative is this one, coming from the stockholders' written demand by the majority. In this case, it was not the secretary on the order of the president that initiated the call for removal, but it was an oversight committee. Kaya kine-question na nila yung resulta ng removal ng directors of the Makati Sports Club. Supreme Court ruled, okay, that procedural requirements such as proper notice and authority to call meetings, they must be observed. Failure to comply on the part of Makati Sports Club would mean invalidity of the meeting. So failure to comply renders the removal invalid. So to emphasize, strict adherence to procedural requirements is essential for the valid removal of directors or trustees. So these are some scenarios where directors were removed. Example 1, the removal is with a cause. Okay, with a cause. When a director is found guilty of embezzling corporate funds, the stockholders representing at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital may vote to remove the director during a special meeting called for this purpose. However, diba, strict compliance with procedural requirement, there must be proper notice for the removal to be valid. Well, removal could be without cause. Gusto lang ng stockholders na tanggalin yung director. As when a director is removed without any specific allegations of wrongdoing. That's possible. The stockholders representing at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock can vote for the removal during a regular meeting. The removal is valid as long as the minority stockholders' right to representation is not violated. How about an example of an invalid removal, just like the case a while ago, Bernas versus Cinco? This happens when a group of stockholders calls for a special meeting to remove a director but fails to notify the secretary or president. Sila lang mismo. Okay? There was no call from the secretary upon the order of the president. It was purely initiated by the stockholders without them composing majority. And it was not in writing. So the meeting proceeds without proper notice to all stockholders. The effect is there is no strict compliance to the procedure. Therefore, the removal is invalid. Key points to remember for bar purposes: removal of a director or trustee can be with or without cause. 2/3 vote is mandatory. In stock corporations, it must be 2/3 vote of the outstanding capital stock. For non-stock, 2/3 vote of the members. Also, strict compliance with procedural requirements, proper notice, and meeting procedures are critical. Common mistakes, failing to meet the voting threshold, 2/3 vote, improperly calling or noticing the meeting. So yung requirement of proper notice and the requirement of a call from the corporate secretary upon the order of the president, and violating minority stockholders' rights. Okay, sample bar question. A director of XYZ Corporation was removed during a special meeting called by a group of stockholders without notifying the secretary or president. The stockholders representing two-thirds of the outstanding capital stock voted for the removal. So take note of this. Sabi natin kanina, there are two ways to or two kinds of meetings that a director or a trustee may be removed. It could be through a regular meeting or a special meeting. If it is through a special meeting, sabi natin, it must be upon the call of the call of a secretary upon the order of the president, or it could be through a written request or order from the stockholders owning majority of the outstanding capital stock. So dito ang nangyari, stockholders representing sila lang mismo, two-thirds, hindi lang majority, two-thirds of the outstanding capital voted for the removal. Now, is the removal valid? The answer, the removal of the director is invalid because the special meeting was improperly called by a group of stockholders without notifying the secretary or president, in violation of the procedural requirements in section 27. So if a special meeting was improperly called, this produces no legal effect, and the actions taken during the meeting will be invalidated. So there must be compliance not only of the substantive requirement, but also the procedural requirement. Now, can a director or trustee be removed by the SEC, motu proprio, hindi yung stockholders? Well, the rule here is that power is primarily exercised by the stockholders. But under section 158 of the RCC, the law grants the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, the power to investigate and impose sanctions for violation of the code. And this includes removal of directors or trustees for cause. So pwede. SEC can also remove a director, but it is for a cause under its power to investigate and impose sanctions. So the Securities and Exchange Commission may intervene in the removal of directors or trustees. This happens under this scenario. Well, it must be for a cause. Must be for a cause. Directors or trustees may be removed for valid causes such as gross misconduct or fraud, breach of fiduciary duties, violation of corporate laws or bylaws. Like in the case of Reiniel versus Jochico, 2007, where the Securities and Exchange Commission upheld the removal of a director for neglecting her duties, including failure to properly turn over corporate records. Another scenario, in case of violation of corporate governance, the SEC may remove directors or trustees who engage in acts that undermine corporate governance, such as in self-dealing, conflict of interest, or abuse of authority. Well, these are valid grounds or could be considered as a cause for the removal of a director through SEC's power to impose sanctions. Also, when there is failure to comply with legal requirements, if directors or trustees fail to meet qualifications under the law or corporate bylaws, they may be removed by SEC. Mag-intervene ang SEC dyan even if it's not initiated by the corporation. Also, in fraudulent or illegal activities, SEC can intervene for the removal of the directors. So SEC may remove, therefore, directors or trustees for valid causes, provided that due process is observed. Key points to remember for purposes of the bar. The RCC makes it clear that the power to remove directors or trustees is lodged with the stockholders or members. They have that primary authority. And in exercising that authority, they must observe or strictly comply with the procedural requirements. However, SEC can intervene in the removal of directors or trustees, but only under a limited cases involving violations of corporate laws or governance principles. Let's try to answer this hypothetical question. The board of directors of XYZ Corporation removed one of its members, Mr. A, for alleged engaging in self-dealing transactions. Mr. A claims that the removal was invalid because he was not given prior notice of the meeting where the removal was decided. Okay? The Securities and Exchange Commission is asked to intervene. Question: was the removal of Mr. A valid? Second question: was the role or what role can SEC play in this situation? Okay, take note that in the given scenario, before SEC intervened, there was already an action to remove this Mr. A as a director. So was the removal of Mr. A valid? The removal of Mr. A was invalid since there is no compliance with the procedural requirements. There was no prior notice. Now, what can SEC do under this situation? Well, SEC can now exercise its power to investigate and impose sanctions. So even if the corporate act of removing Mr. A was invalid, SEC can still intervene. The SEC can investigate the matter and determine whether the removal was for valid cause and complied with procedural requirements. If the removal violated corporate laws or governance principles, the SEC may nullify the removal and impose sanctions. So again, how can directors and trustees be removed? Well, it could be through the act of the corporation, through the stockholders, through their vote, or it could be by SEC.